So yeah, the fourth time now here that Gordon is going up against Felipe, and I just wanted to get your kind of thoughts generally on this next iteration of one of the greatest rivalries in Jiu-Jitsu.
Yeah, the odd thing about this being the fourth match is the timeline between the matches. The first match was very early in Gordon's career. His game was still largely undeveloped. His game in those days was based around leg locks. Then the second time they met, Gordon was in a transitional phase where he was starting to go from lower body and back submissions to a much more complete game. But it was still fairly early in that transition. It's crazy to think that early in the transition, Gordon was still able to win gold and silver in ADCC. But the brute fact was it was still fairly early in that transition. Then the third time they met, you had both athletes in the mature phase of their career. Their game is not complete, but is fully matured. And you could see the difference in outcome as time went by. Now, what's interesting about this fourth match is the time between the matches is radically less than before. The first match feels like it was eons ago at this point. Even the second match, way back in 2017, it's a long time ago. And both athletes have evolved so much, technically and tactically, since then. But this fourth match is literally just a few months after the third. And so when we looked at all the other matches, the big question was how much of the two athletes changed since the elapsed time. And you could see there was a considerable amount. Just look at the outcomes of the matches. Obviously, there's a lot of change going on there. But this time around, there's almost no time elapsed. It's just a couple of months. And there's been very little in terms of output since they've matched up against each other. So given that so little time has elapsed, it's probably fair to say that neither of them will be technically much different. You can only learn so much so quickly. And in that time elapsed, there's just not enough time for either one of them to radically change their games on a technical level. So this fourth match is all going to be almost entirely about tactics. How are they tactically different rather than how they're technically different? The first to the second match, both of them changed a lot technically. The second to the third, both of them changed massively technically. But this time, there's just not enough time for technical change. It's going to come down to tactical change. And the big question is, how are they going to handle the rule set? Both of them showed good discipline with their pacing in that third match. No time limit matches are always first and foremost about dominating the pace of the match. You don't want to come out too hard too early. But on the other hand, you can't let genuine match-winning opportunities go by either. You know, if you can finish the match here and now, you want to put in the effort and get it done. But that's done in the backdrop that if you try that and fail, this could be a potential problem because this match just goes on and on. And in a no time limit match, the ultimate submission is ultimately fatigue. And that proved to be decisive in the third match. So the big question will be, how do they handle work rate? And Gordon is a master of managing work rate across different rule sets, but none more so than in no time limit matches. So the big question will be, how does Felipe improve his work rate management this time around? I know he's doing specialized training with Atos. I'm sure that's a big part of their camp, just the idea of pacing a match properly. Gordon, of course, will be doing the same thing. In the previous encounter, both, I thought, did a good job managing pace, but Gordon did a slightly better job. And as a result, around 42 minutes in, was able to get a submission more or less directly through fatigue. So this will be the great question of this fourth match.
Would you mind kind of like taking us through a little bit that third match? And
yeah.
Kind of what the strategy was and how did the match go according to how you thought it would?
Yeah. First off, anytime you have like an intense rivalry, emotions inevitably creep into the match. And emotions can play hell with your ability to keep a steady pace, because things like anger, frustration tend to make us want to quicken the pace and attack more vociferously. Now, Gordon is a master of agitating other people's emotions while remaining very cold inside himself. And Felipe tends to run hot whenever he's hot. And so that was his big concern. His preparation was also made much more complicated by the passing away of his friend Leandro Lo shortly before the match. So I'm sure that also played some role in his emotional energy when he went into the match. So I think what we'll see here is a much more, I don't mean to say emotionless, but I don't believe Felipe will allow himself to be affected as much by emotion as he was in the third match. I think he's getting used to this idea of like, okay, it's about a professional fight where you, or professional bout where you go in and there's a result. Ultimately, it's the result that counts, and you can't take it personally, and let's get it done. So I think that he will approach this match in a much more professional way than he did previously. It's not going to be this emotional thing where this guy annoys me, I want to match with him. It's going to be, okay, what do I have to do to maintain a pace which is going to enable me to win this match? So I think Felipe will be a much more emotionally mature person coming into this match based on his experience in the third match.